Hello there, and welcome to our third bonus episode of the new, we can still call it new, right? New historical podcast, Bloody Heart of Europe.
Ooh.
My name is Vasek, and this is...
Alžběta.
Yes, indeed. Hopefully you already know who we are, a bit at least, because as I said, we're kind of counting on you already consuming some of our content from before, right?
Yeah. But I think at the same time, like, if this is somehow like your first encounter, definitely check out the main episode. It's my favorite episode. If anything you should hear from us, it should be episode 3 about Jan Hus.
Absolutely, because on our journey through the history of the Kingdom of Bohemia and all the incredible stories that happen in the course of the Hussite Wars and all the revolutions and all the bloody chaos, we finally get to, the character who, even many years after his death, continues to stand tall above everything and being a pillar of a movement. He didn't really, he wasn't really there to see their main triumphs, but also hated as a heretic and an enemy. And so our main episode was centered about him, and this bonus episode, just like we usually do, aims to explore some context and maybe add some details to some of the stuff we said during the main episode.
Yes, exactly. I was thinking like that today. We are not bloody hard. We are more like fried, toasted hard.
Nah, I'm full of energy. It's fine.
No. I meant like that, Jan Hus.
Right. You mean like this, yeah.
Very sorry, by the way, for the insanely gruesome details that we had when it came to his execution, Jan Hus' execution. It's not our, that we would be so... crazy that we would really like to give you some nasty details. I mean, I like to give you some nasty details, but they are not from our head. They are actually an account from Petr of Mladoňovice that was present at the trial, and he was also present at the execution. So all the details about them finding the heart and then just roast it, it's apparently true.
You were afraid that people would suspect us of making up the details about his execution?
Yeah. I mean, they sound too dramatic, too insane.
Just imagine the scene of the two of us sitting with the script and going, what else could they do to him? They could pierce his heart with a stick. Yeah, no, that's not what we are doing. Fortunately for our mental health.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think like the first topic that I have seemingly doesn't have that much to do with Jan Hus, but it's very important for what it's about to come in the future. And it's also very important for you to understand Bohemia and Czechia as Czech Republic today, because it's something that started many, many, many years ago, and it somewhat is still present till today.
Because, I wouldn't even say that it doesn't, I would say that it is quite closely connected to what we're talking about with Jan Hus, because it's one of the main parts of the episode is actually traveling with him into the heart of the kingdom, into the heart of the Holy Roman Empire back then, into Prague. And the fun thing is that Prague was way less nationally defined than it is today, where you can quite easily point to, people who are Czech and people who are tourists, basically. Whereas back then it used to be much, much more complicated, especially in relation to the Germans, because the lands of the Bohemian crown always had a huge percentage of German-speaking and German-cultured population, and that certainly was the case back in Hus's day.
Yes. I even have some numbers when it comes to, since you're speaking about Prague. It's like maybe first thing, when we are talking about Prague, we are actually talking about 3 towns that are joined together. Some of European cities are like that. Prague is one of them. Right now, if you travel to Prague, you wouldn't realize it. It's just districts. But back then, it was basically separate 3 towns that somewhat created one Prague together. And the biggest difference between the 2 biggest ones were Old Town and New Town. And Old Town, as the name says, it's the classic, the center, the OG Prague. And New Town was actually a town built by Charles IV.
Our main boy, who built so much stuff. So he even built a whole new Prague, basically.
But exactly. He was just like, yeah, let's make Prague bigger. So he just founded this whole new town. And because it was new, it actually attracted way more, like people that didn't have that much money and people who were just like newcomers, and they were like, oh my God, Prague, I heard it's great. So they go there and they're just like, oh, all the, nice places are already taken, but we have this like whole massive new town that has a lot of empty lot. So you have a lot of Czech people coming in. So the population, when it came to Newtown, it was Germans were 12%, and the Czechs were 62%. The rest was like, we don't know. It was just a mix. And for Old Town, it was way more German. Before Hussite Wars now, or like before Hussite movement, it was 36% of Germans and 42% of Czechs. So it was like almost similar numbers in Old Town as Czechs as Germans. But yeah.
Well, the question that's on everyone's lips, I guess, is what were the Germans doing there? Because traditionally you would look for them more to the west, because Germany is on the western border of today's Czech Republic. So what gives?
It is very, it comes like way in the past when we look into like 9th, 10th century, when you didn't even have, or like Holy Roman Empire just started to be a thing. Before that, it was East Francia, and they were right on the borders with Bohemia, and there was constantly contact with these others. You had this massive empire and this relatively small. It wasn't a kingdom back in the day.
It was a duchy, right?
It was a duchy, and so obviously the relationship was there. You had some monarchs that tried to be against, like some dukes, they tried to fight, and they tried to be like, oh, we will not collaborate, we will not cooperate with the empire, but very quickly realized like it's hard to do that if you have a massive neighbor who wants to have everything under control, like sometimes it's the case. So there were relationships from the beginning. Usually it was that duchy was vassals to the Germans, or like to kings of Germans, but then like it came with some of the bonuses. Like for example, some of the dukes actually got the title king from the Germans because they helped the Germans and stuff like that. So it was like a beneficial on like each side. It was never like a part of Germany, but the relationship was there. And then comes this big German colonization, where a lot of German people, population just started to migrating from Germany to the different parts of Europe. And actually, Bohemian Kingdom at that time, it was already kingdom, actually invited these
colonizers?
Colonizers? Yeah, it sounds weird when you say it in a way where like they are invited.
Exactly. They were not like conquistadors who were enslaving the local population. It was more of a just let's move over the border.
Yeah,
it's gonna be nice.
Yeah, it was like at the end of 12th century and 13th and beginning 13th century and during 13th century, especially when you had these locations of Bohemia, where just like no one was living there. It was mountains, it was forests, it was not the soil there wasn't like the best soil, so
Yep.
it was a little bit like, if you want it and if you want to do something with it, fine. Like, we definitely don't care about that part. And actually, it was quite a lot of Germans coming in, and they had a lot of help from the state itself. They didn't have to pay taxes in the beginning. A lot of the time, they even had a lot of the time they had like they could keep their own laws, like German laws, even though it was like a part of Bohemian Kingdom. And and that was the process of some sort of Germanization of Bohemia.
So since the Germans settled mostly these border mountainous regions, because if you look at the map of today's Czech Republic, you will see that the mountainous regions are generally copying the borders of the state, then it doesn't sound like they necessarily came into too much contact with the original Czech population, but then they spread to the cities and stuff, and they just became a part of the fabric of society, right?
Yeah, it was like a part of it. It's also these people, because they have these tax exemptions and stuff like that, they actually become quite quickly rich.
Yeah.
And is that generational wealth when like, okay, my dad was rich, so I'm rich too, blah, 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 classic case. And after that, you just, you want to expand. You don't want to just be a farmer. You want to go to a city. You want to like start trade. Also, they had good contacts in Germany. So like these people exactly started to like also be a big part of cities. And of course, like it was there wasn't much of that sense of them versus us. It was like, so you would have normal marriages in between like Czech population and German population, but at the same time, they were keeping their languages, which was the factor that would kind of be like, oh, are you a Czech or German? It's based on which language you're using.
Yeah. Not really citizenship or IDs, but just what's your mother tongue? And yes, let's face it, that many people were probably, bilingual and spoke both tongues, especially in the parts of the country where it was relevant. So yeah, but the relationship, it's, from what you've said so far, it doesn't seem to be too antagonistic.
Yeah.
But then again, we've already talked in the main episode a bit about certain differences that were beginning to emerge, or that were emerging during our story and were important for our story, regarding the fact that, one segment, the German-speaking segment of the population, was more inclined to support King Sigismund. The other, the Czechs or the Bohemians, were more inclined to support their own king, Wenceslas. So that surely was relevant in Jan Hus's time, right?
Definitely. It was also sometimes relevant in the past, but usually it came in the moments of crisis. Like if everything goes well and everyone's happy, like it's fine. But if you have crisis, then of course the foreigners are the ones who causes it.
It's a classic argument, always works.
Yeah, exactly. But by the way, it was like interesting also, like as we talked about how they felt about Germans versus Czechs, they also have this kind of like a term where like it was like a Czech German and foreign German. So like they kind of differentiate which German you are, because you could be a part of Bohemian Kingdom and be that like Czech German, and then, or Holy Roman Empire, and then you are just completely wrong. You're some really, really foreign. But in that time, exactly, like it is interesting that, we have this guy, Wycliffe, from his ideas happened in England. His ideas are brought to Bohemia, and suddenly it just caught on. And it's interesting that it resonates way more with Czech people than German people. It's not completely that it would be like 100% of Czech people would support this like reform and trying to be against church, and Germans would be pro, but like the percentage was more on side of Czech people, so it kind of bled into exactly these, okay, so if you want to be Czech, you have to support Wycliffe ideas. If you're a true Czech, then it became like a nationality question.
Yeah, but still, it's way too simplistic to say that this was a a war or a conflict of ideas of Czechs against Germans. It was that societal pressures just put the majority of one kind of people on one side, and it wasn't about the nationality.
No, it wasn't. And it's just like a lot of the time, it's just a very personal problems that drives all these things. One of that, we can talk about decree of Kutná Hora, which is a very important decree for Czech people. We didn't
of Gutenberg.
Of Gutenberg.
Yeah.
We didn't include it in main story because it kind of doesn't have that much impact on the story. But basically this decree says that you have Charles University. And Charles University at that time had these so-called nations, which was kind of like a clubs for, if you're a German student, then you would be with this like German nation. If you're a Polish student, you would be part of Polish nation, and so on and so forth. And they had their heads, these nations, that would preside in Charles University. And when they had like some voting, everyone had one vote. And this decree basically said that all the foreign nations had only one vote, and Czech nation had 3 votes. And it was all because Wenceslas really needed the support of the university for I don't want to go into detail, but he needed the support of the university.
I mean, we've already talked about the fact that the university, it just wasn't. Did we talk about it already? About the fact that the university wasn't just an educational institution, but it actually wielded significant political power.
It's gonna be.
In the next episode. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. In the fourth episode, you will see that the university is actually quite a power player in the struggles for domination in the kingdom. So,
so sorry, just this long story about university, just to like a little bit bring it. The whole thing was that a lot of, basically like a lot of German-speaking professors just left because they were like, I'm not supported. I cannot do the university work the way how I want. And exactly, they were like supporting. They were for Sigismund because they expected that Sigismund is going to become a Holy Roman Emperor in the future, because at that time Wenceslas was really, really weak, and it looked like, okay, from these two it's going to be Sigismund. So for a German-speaking or like a German professor, it made sense that he needs to support Sigismund, because if he wants to go back to German university, he would be under Sigismund's rule. So he really needs to be on the side of this like German side. Meanwhile, the Czechs have their own reasons.
Yeah, when we look at Wenceslas, we can see that even though he may have called himself the king of the Romans until his dying day, he had no interest in actually leaving the kingdom and trying to do anything for like in Germany and for the Germans, outside his borders.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also another argument why the Germans might not have been too keen on him as their ruler and to support him.
What is interesting, just to finish this decree of Gutenberg, is that because he made this, loads of these German professors just left in protest because they were like, okay, fuck this university, we go somewhere else. It just led into this, that the university became a hub of Hussites.
Yeah.
And it became the center of like, okay, like we have a free reign. It's most of the Czech people support Hus and his ideas. So,
Yeah. This this leaving of the German professors, it didn't really translate into, let's say, easing the national tensions between the Czechs and the Germans, right?
No.
Because those were even more pronounced in later years.
You will hear it in upcoming episodes more and more.
Yeah. And like even if you talked about, or if you studied Czech history like in more modern terms, you would see that this great topic of a resistance, I would say, against the German encroachment and cultural domination. It's a huge topic, like throughout Czech history. There was this huge movement about basically restoring and reinventing Czech culture, which has been so almost disappeared by the Germans. So yeah, it's a huge thing, and then obviously the Second World War didn't help with the relationship between the two nations. So
yeah. Maybe just very quickly, exactly in the future. So you will get like very very future spoilers. After the 30 Years' War, basically Germans won, and like all the Protestants who were again Czech people, they just like either were killed or emigrated. So the Germanization became like full swing, and like the German language became the official language, and it was like way more like, okay, we are on it. And that kind of lasted till 19th century, and in 19th century you would have this like national revival of Czech people that just started to feel like, okay, like we have our own culture, we've been under German rule for so long, let's just like explore that. And one of the historians, it's a big name, František Palacký, he was the one who started to studying history, Czech history specifically, and he looked at Hussites and he realized that if you want to build a nation again, because it was a part of Austria-Hungary Empire, so like they wanted to just like build Czech nation that was suppressed for so many years, that he was like, you need a story. And the story of Hussites sounded absolutely perfect, because exactly you have this it just translated so well as a fight between Czechs and Germans, and it was perfect for the time in 19th century where they just saw it as something like, oh, see, like the Czech people stood up to German oppression and they just kicked them out, and they ruled on their own. So as much as like for our taste it might sound racist, from today's standpoint of view, we're like, oh, they kicked out Germans, it's horrible, why they weren't more tolerant. It was like in 19th century, it was more of a story of like, okay, this is how you can fight oppression, which is super interesting, because then it led a little bit more after World War I, when Czechoslovakia was founded as a country. They, again, the president, the former president, the first president of Czechoslovakia, Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk, he was a huge history nerd too. And he thought, again, like, you need a story, you need something that is compelling, something that just brings everyone together and they can just, like feel proud that you are Czech. And he looked in Hus and he saw that he was such an interesting character that was, fighting for something bigger than he was. And exactly that, like German Czechs thing was like still resonating there, but he more like Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk looked into that, what he was saying, and that's why we have truth prevails as national motto, because it's this guy, Jan Hus.
Yeah, he died for his truth, didn't he?
He died for his truth.
Yeah. So those are some of the reasons why Jan Hus continues to be extremely popular and well known in the Czech Republic to this day. There's a big holiday centered around him, and it's this whole thing about the respect he still commands within Czech society. It's not only because of the fight of his supporters against the Germans. It's not only this nationalistic angle of things. It also reflects on, I don't know. It's a bit of a detour, but I think that it is worth saying that basically every single regime that there ever was after the 19th century co-opted Hus for their own ideas. Yes. Like we had the first independent Czechoslovak Republic, which was, very like liberal democratic. Then we got the communists after their coup, after their takeover of power after the Second World War, and they also liked the Hussites and Jan Hus, even though it was for completely different reasons, right?
Yeah, we will definitely talk about communism and Hussites later on when we get to Žižka, because it is interesting how much they adopted it, but they really liked that social aspect of the revolution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Forget the national stuff, or like not put too much focus on it. Completely forget the religious stuff.
Absolutely. To be honest, that was the first republic too. Like the Czechoslovakia was a little bit like, yeah, like religion, okay, but that's not the main focus. because
Yeah.
it's the truth.
Yeah.
It's the ideals.
Exactly, the ideals. And then after the communists were overthrown in the late 80s, then the new, once again, free and democratic republic also came back to Hus and the Hussites as a source of inspiration. And
Yeah, and then you might have heard about Václav Havel, who was our first Czech president, not Czechoslovakia, after the communist regime. And he kind of like, as we have that truth prevails as national motto, so like he came up with like a version, because exactly that like anti-communist version, which was more truth and love must prevail over lies and hatred, which is more about that like coming back to the hippie side of things.
Yeah. So whatever you may want to project into Jan Hus, you may very well try and do that, even though you might not succeed if you're, a crazy fascist expansionist guy, for example, because that doesn't really align well to his ideas. But then again, his supporters were quite expansionist and did do a fair share of conquering. So maybe,
exactly. You can find any angle. It's fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will certainly talk more about Hus and who he was a bit later during this episode.
Yeah, I didn't want to put too much focus because you heard a lot in the episode. Yeah. So I just wanted to focus a little bit more on people that they didn't get that much space.
Exactly. And there are people that are quite important for the story, but just because of time and space constraints, we couldn't really do them justice in the main episode. So yeah, this is their time to shine, and I think that one of the characters we absolutely must talk about, Elżbieta, is another guy who was a significant religious thinker of the day, and that is Jerome of Prague. Yeah. Who is Jerome of Prague, Elżbieta?
Jerome of Prague, he's an amazing guy. I really like him, and if we had more space, I think he would definitely deserve his own episode because he was cool.
Thank you so much for watching this far. If you want more, then there is more to be had, because in this bonus episode, which is in its entirety is available on Patreon, that is Bloody Heart of Europe Patreon. Yeah, there is something about a few popes, isn't there, Elżbieta?
Oh yeah, it's a story that definitely is worth to listen, because we will talk about these unhinged old men who were doing crazy stuff. We will have adultery, we will have disguises and running away. So yeah, join us on Patreon.
Thank you so much for your support. Bye.
Bye.
A big thank you to everyone who's helping make this podcast happen, especially to Bohumil Červený and Martin Baláš, our Jan Žižka's own patrons. Thanks so much, guys.